Hey, what's up guys? Today I'll show you a horror mystery film, The Ice Demon. Spoiler ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins when two hikers are climbing a snowy mountain. The wind is too strong, forcing them to make a stop for a while. They then set up a tent in the field, but upon digging in the snow, they find a body underneath it. The weather is too bad, so they cannot report it at that moment. One of them hesitates to sleep near the body, so the two of them drag the frozen body away from the tent. Later, one of them wakes up from her sleep. She sees her friend's face completely frozen, but it appears black. She then checks the thing beside her, and it turns out to be the frozen body they dragged earlier. In the next scene, a teenage girl, Kusha, is walking in the snowy streets. She comes to feed a street dog inside the bus. Her lover, Semyon, and his friends arrive on the bus, claiming they own the dog. She wants to take the dog with her, but they refuse to let it go. Semyon then says they will give the dog to her if she wins one round of Russian roulette. She bravely accepts the challenge, and Semyon puts a single bullet in the gun. He points it to the poor dog and pulls the trigger. But no bullet comes out. He pulls the trigger on himself next, but there is still no bullet coming out. Kusha then takes the gun, and she shoots away. This time the gun fires a bullet. Her stepfather, Misha, arrives on the bus and hears the sound of the gun. He then confiscates it from Semyon. After that, Misha drives back home with Kusha and her new dog. Meanwhile, the police found the body of the two hikers and the other frozen body. Semyon's police official father, nicknamed Officer Mustache, responds to the situation. Officer Mustache reads the report indicating that one of the hikers is dead, while the other has frostbite. The autopsy doctor checks the frozen body, and he finds its skin undamaged, despite being frozen after 10 years. He thinks that it is already dead, but it turns out to be still alive. He immediately calls the intensive care unit to take care of the body. In the meantime, Kusha and her stepfather arrive back home. Her doctor's mother awaits them. The mother asks her husband why he allowed her to take the dog back home. He then says that she would not listen to him. Suddenly, they receive a call from the hospital. Kusha answers the call and learns that the body of her father, called Mr. Vodka, who went missing 10 years ago, is found in the snowy mountain. It turns out that the frozen body belongs to him. They immediately come to the hospital after the call. There, the scientist tells them they cannot go in yet, since Mr. Vodka is still in a deep coma and under quarantine. So only relatives can go visit him. Kusha is his biological daughter, so the scientist allows them to go in, leaving Misha alone outside. Officer arrives outside and shows the photo of the black frostbite to him. The scientist remarks that it is a miracle that Mr. Vodka stays alive and seems heavily drunk like a drunkard after being frozen for 10 years. Inside, the mother approaches Mr. Vodka, and his eyes suddenly open. She then reports it to the scientist, who refuses to believe her, saying it is just a muscle contraction. The scientist says she needs to study Mr. Vodka's case, since it is a unique case. However, the mother decides that she will bring Mr. Vodka back to their home, despite the apparent opposition from her current husband. The following day, Mr. Vodka's body arrives back at their home. The mother shows their old things to Kusha. She says that Mr. Vodka left them in the past, and they just stayed in the house. Apparently, she cannot remember anything from him. Kusha puts back the box, but a force suddenly pushes it out. It then falls, and the letterboxes from her father come out of it, so she takes it with her. Outside, Semyon arrives to get the gun back from Misha. Apparently, the gun is his father's service firearm. Misha refuses to give it back to him, saying his father should come take it back. But Semyon cannot inform his father about it, since his father will be enraged by that. Misha also warns him never to see Kusha again. Meanwhile, the mother spends the time taking care of Mr. Vodka. She then gives him a warm kiss, trying to awaken his drunk life. On the other side, Kusha takes time watching videos about a coma. She then finds out the ancient people believe that the soul is separated from the body of a person who is in a coma. It is believed that it is possible to communicate with the person's soul using a thing related to the person. That evening, Misha arrives back home and finds out that her mother is still sitting beside Mr. Vodka. He asks her if she remembers the moment she asked for his help when she ran away from Mr. Vodka. In response, she utters that she did not know whether Mr. Vodka was already dead or still alive. She then says she has been trying to remember the past for 10 years. He warns her that Mr. Vodka is a dangerous man, like a drunkard. This makes her angry, so she tells him to leave their house, In the meantime, Kusha tries to communicate with her father using the letterboxes, while her dog watches on the side. But she receives no response. Semyon suddenly arrives, sneaking through her windows. He says he pays a visit to give back her flashlight. So they play a game where they reveal each other's secrets. He shares that during his childhood, he ran away from their house. He came back 3 days later, and his father did not scold him. His father just tearfully said he was glad that Semyon finally came back. In turn, Kusha reveals that she does not remember anything from her father, so she does not feel anything about him. Outside, Misha is axing the woods, trying to express his masculinity, because no one listens to him in the house. He finds out that Semyon sneaks inside, so he angrily tells him to leave. Later, Misha tries to have a smelly exercise with his wife, however, she is cold towards him, pissing off his hormones. Meanwhile, Kusha attempts to communicate with her frozen father again. This time she holds her father's body, and she throws the letterboxes. It then indicates the phrase, Misha killed. She suddenly hears a person coming inside the room, so she immediately hides. The person comes near her father, and her father suddenly shakes. She comes out to check, but there is no one there, while her father stops shaking. The following day, Kusha wakes up, only to notice bruises on her mother's arms, so she thinks Misha hurts her mother. In response, however, the mother instructs her to keep everything in the house a secret. Kusha walks outside, and shares with Semyon that her stepfather possibly hurts her mother. Semyon says Misha is a tough guy, and he once protected her mother. But Kusha seems not to be aware of it. Officer Mustache arrives to pick up his son, leaving her alone on the beach. Officer Mustache angrily confronts Semyon about his firearm, but Semyon denies taking his firearm. To avoid the confrontation, Semyon runs away from his father. Meanwhile, the mother seems to be out of herself, while beating the meat with a hammer. A ghostly hand suddenly appears, and proceeds to choke her. Misha notices her trying to gasp for breath. As he comes near her, the hand suddenly disappears. He asks her about it, but she says she gets startled by him. He then shares his weird dream. In that dream, he walks toward Mr. Vodka's room, and sees her riding him. She suddenly chases him, using the hammer. His dream then transitions to where he wakes up, and proceeds to turn off the machine that keeps Mr. Vodka's body alive. Mr. Vodka suddenly appears behind him. In return, he sees himself in bed, shaking like hell. Back to reality, Misha is shaking back again, trying to gasp for breath. Kusha arrives to help him. She then sees her mother just watching him. Kusha brings him to the hospital. The scientist says he had a mini stroke. Later, Kusha drives back home, and she finds Mr. Vodka's oxygen tank has run out. His vital signs are dropping, so she immediately replaces them with another. The mother arrives and gets angry with her, so the mother slaps her out of nowhere. The mother thinks that Kusha deliberately turns off the machine. It seems that the mother is becoming unnaturally obsessed with Mr. Vodka. Back to the hospital, the frozen hiker suddenly shakes dramatically. The scientist then comes to respond to her condition, but she still dies. After that, Officer Mustache comes to talk with the scientist. He shares about the case he handled in his younger years. Apparently, he holds a case where a father murdered his family. He tried to talk with the father, but the father giggled and uttered that the demons did it. The father said the demon needed a body, and proceeded to shoot himself to death. In their house, Kusha figures out that her dog is missing. She comes outside to look for it. There, she encounters Semyon. She suddenly gets tearful, and shares with Semyon that her mother hurts her. He comforts her with his muscles, and asks her to leave their house. He offers her to live with his bulletproof muscles in a hostel for a while, just for safety. But she refuses to do so, since she cannot leave her family. Suddenly, seemingly evil spirits possess Semyon, turning him to be violent toward her. In response, she kicks him in his shitty muscles, and locks him in the room. Kusha walks out of the room, and she suddenly remembers her frozen father. It turns out that her father was always violent towards her mother in the past. This forced her mother to leave him. But he refused to let them leave. As he came to hurt the young Kusha, her mother smashes him in his onion head, which leads to his death. This means that Mr. Vodka is already dead all along, and something has been keeping him alive for a long time. Back to the present, Kusha drives away from the house, leaving Semyon alone. He finally gets normal again. He walks towards the storage room, only to find the dog already dead. The door suddenly closes, and a hand appears behind him. Suddenly his father's gun mysteriously rolls towards him. He holds the gun, and the demon whispers to him to kill himself. He gets hypnotized, so he proceeds to shoot himself, ending his muscle life. In the hospital, Misha sees a vision of the hiker patient, slowly crawling toward him. He then frantically tries to move out of his bed. Fortunately, the scientist arrives to help him out. The scientist receives the result of Mr. Vodka's brain scan, indicating that his brain is already dead. She shows it to Kusha and her stepfather. She informs them that there must be something supernatural entity that keeps Mr. Vodka's body alive. Possibly, a demon is currently using Mr. Vodka's body to spread terror and manipulate people's minds. The scientist then warns them that Mr. Vodka can be dangerous. Misha suddenly remembers his wife, who is still in the house with him. So the three of them drive back home. The possessed mother awaits the scientist with a hidden hammer. The scientist informs her that they need Mr. Vodka's body back to the hospital. But she suddenly gets violent and proceeds to hammer down the scientist. Luckily, Misha is able to prevent her. But she also gets violent towards him, so she ends up attacking him instead. Meanwhile, Kusha hears a snow sound upstairs. She comes to check it, and finds snow coming out of Mr. Vodka's room. She walks inside, only to see the room completely frozen. Possibly, the ice demon is causing it. She then decides to turn off the machine to end Mr. Vodka's drunk life, and in that way, the demon will stop causing horror to them. Mr. Vodka's body suddenly moves to prevent her. But fortunately, she still manages to turn it off, finally ending his frozen life. Because of that, the mother gets back to her normal self. Misha comes to check on Kusha upstairs. She asks her stepfather if she killed her father, but he says that her father was already dead years ago. It turns out in the past, Kusha and her mother ran away from the house after asking for Misha's help. Misha arrived and found Mr. Vodka's body completely covered in blood. He then proceeded to dispatch Mr. Vodka's body to the snowy mountains, so as to protect the mother from the prosecutors. Soon after, the medical team arrives to take care of Mr. Vodka's dead body. Officer Mustache also arrives to ask them to sign papers about Mr. Vodka's death. Officer Mustache asks Misha if Kusha met his son, because his son has still not come home. He then says that his son is already a grown-up, and he can already take care of himself. Officer Mustache suddenly asks about Mr. Vodka's head injury. He is getting curious about what has caused it, and suddenly notices a bullet hole in the storage room. So he asks Misha if he can see it. Misha allows him. He opens the door, and to his surprise, his dead son is lying on the floor, covered in blood. The scene gets him sad and mad at the same time. He believes that Misha killed his son. In the hospital, the scientist inspects Mr. Vodka's body. Suddenly, she notices strange sounds around her. Mr. Vodka's spirit suddenly appears and proceeds to choke her. Meanwhile, Officer Mustache brings Misha to the middle of the woods. He is interrogating Misha for killing his son. He attempts to shoot Misha, but Misha pleads that he is not responsible for the death of his son. Misha says that it was Mr. Vodka who killed his son, but Misha cannot explain it. Misha then begs his mustache for mercy and not to kill him, since he needs to save Kusha. But Officer Mustache completely loses his mind in anger, and he ends up shooting himself in the head. He dies, and his body lies in the snowy field. Misha proceeds to drive back home. At home, Kusha wakes up searching for her mother. She then finds her mother laughing alone in front of the table. Apparently, the mother is happily talking to Mr. Vodka, while eating her invisible dinner. Kusha tells her that Mr. Vodka is already dead, and he is not there. The mother gets angry, and chases her with a knife. She immediately runs to the room, and attempts to jump in the window. But she sees her mother looking at her in the window. Misha arrives, but Kusha cannot open the door for him. She decides to run to the storage room, where she finds Semyon's dead body. The mother appears there, and she runs to the door. The mother reappears behind her, and tries to stab her. Misha manages to open the door, and proceeds to help her out. But the mother appears to have supernatural strength, enabling her to throw his chubby body away like a rag doll. Kusha reminds her mother that she murdered Mr. Vodka, but the mother repeatedly denies it. She suddenly shakes, and stabs herself in the neck. She bleeds and dies. In the end, Kusha and her stepfather leave the house together, while the possessed mother and Mr. Vodka appear in the window, looking at them. This is Daniel CC Movie Channel. Stay safe and enjoy your day.